Keeping in line with the English language works that we have, works in the English language. We have another one which is an explanation of Kitab al Buyu, or the chapters of trade and commerce, as is translated on the title, in specifically the book Jami at-Tirmidhi. And that is, the explanation is done by Mufti Taqi Usmani, and it's translated by Mufti ibn Adam, al-Kawthari, and he also adds his own annotations, etc., and comments. Now, Jami at-Tirmidhi is a significant hadith work, focusing more on masail al-fiqhiyya, but also talking about ilal of hadith and stuff. Mufti Taqi himself is, very proficient and specializes in Islamic finance. It's on many boards, has written a work on fiqh al Buyu, which is a contemporary work on modern Islamic finance, right? Now, and Mufti ibn Adam is one of his main students, you can say. Now, this book is, it's a very, the Jami at-Tirmidhi is one of the final books that we study in the Dars Nizami kind of syllabus, and it's quite an advanced book which needs a lot of prerequisite knowledge. And I would assume even the explanation of the chapters of trade and commerce would require some prerequisite knowledge as well, right? Yeah. So now the same question applies to this, in the sense of what's the benefit of translating this book? What does it do for non-ulama, non-student, non-tulab? That gives it that special miza.
So let's start with the book itself. So this is a book written by Mufti Taqi, or his lectures on Tirmidhi. It's an Urdu work called Dars Tirmidhi. A lot of mashayikh that teach Tirmidhi, you see it. It's this 3-volume Urdu work. And so what Mufti ibn Adam, who you can say is one of the closest associate Mufti Taqi in the UK. You might have other people that are closest students maybe, but in terms of closest to Mufti Taqi himself actively goes and, spends time and travels with him. Whenever he comes to Europe, Mufti ibn Adam is with him. And to be honest, when you speak to Mufti ibn Adam, and the few times I have, all the talks of Mufti Taqi. Right, that mahabba that Mufti ibn Adam has. You can't mulazim because they live in different countries, but that mahabba, the ta'alluq, the connection that they have. I haven't seen much of that nowadays, because especially I think we in London don't have it as much, because we saw in our own lives the idea of having this kind of connection maybe is a bit more alien for us. But everything is revolves on Mufti Taqi. Right? In essence, if any fatwa he gives, it's just a Mufti Taqi fatwa. And there's something that I want to answer about as well, because I remember years ago I was having a conversation with a Ustad, and he mentioned this point. He goes like, why is Mufti Taqi so famous? Right? What's so significant about Mufti Taqi Usmani? And at that time, this is many years ago, right? And I was saying, I was trying to think of an answer, like, why is he so famous? Because sometimes a person gains fame because always because of his dad, right? Mufti Muhammad Shafi, rahmatullahi alayhi, was a big scholar, and then, because of that, Mufti Taqi, but that wouldn't answer it. And he's always got books. Other people got books. So what's significant about Mufti Taqi? It's only when you start to read Mufti Taqi and you understand why he's such a giant that he is in Islamic ulum. There's a couple of qualities that Mufti Taqi Usmani has that are very unique. Number one is his insaf, is the idea of being just. So he's very cautious with the language he uses. Right? Of course, that doesn't mean every answer is right. I'm just saying in general, the language he uses is just.
He doesn't speak in absolutes.
He doesn't speak absolutes. He's very nuanced. He's very well travelled.
Yes.
So therefore, his answers have this kind of, along with justice, but because he's well travelled, it's very well nuanced and very well thought through. So even when he's answering questions for people in America or in the UK, it's a very cautious answer of someone who's very much aware of the society.
He's informed of the context.
In contrast to other ulama sometimes who may be, as knowledgeable, maybe have read as much, but sometimes their answers are not like they're very, there's a gap between what they're saying and the reality on the ground. So Mufti Taqi, that's one quality of his which stands out. Insaf puts second quality in there as well, the awareness of the people around him, and that's why he's written English, Urdu, and Arabic. So you can see 3 key languages. Not only has he not translated in Urdu, these are translated, but he's got books, not translated in English, he's also got books himself in English as well. He can speak English, and so that's the first issue. Second issue is Islamic finance. That Mufti Taqi, he became a scholar who engaged in Islamic finance on all contemporary issues, in providing answers to stuff that people were not finding answers for. So I give you an issue here, right? I'll give you an example. I want to write a book now in English on Introduction to Ulum al-Hadith. Whether I think this is a good book or a bad book, it's made my task easy, right? If I write a book on Ulum al-Hadith now, knowing that book's out there, I could rectify stuff. It could be good. You write one as well. Then he writes one. Then you're eventually going to come to a book which is very good. And when you come and go back to this book, you say, why was this book all that great for?
Yeah.
Right? Because we've got all these tahqiqat now. But people forget that this was one of the first that was written.
Yeah.
So when they were written and everyone made it easy for everyone else to masail, you're coming along and basically drinking from that, pool, not being aware that when there wasn't much there, this was a significant work.
He was the pioneer.
Exactly. So when you look at his book like Fiqh al Buyu, it's not one of the examples you look back and it's not good. If you read Fiqh al Buyu, you read his contemporary masail in Arabic, his stuff is in Urdu, you will see throughout it that there is a level of depth, and there's one of them mentioned at a separate point in which he tackles contemporary issues through a way that is practical. If you should read his methodology, he talks about how his father would say that it's easy to say things are impermissible, but a real faqih is someone who can provide alternatives. I'm paraphrasing. They will provide alternatives. So him and his brother, Mufti Usmani, who passed away recently, they were both trying to say, okay, one is you can't do this, but how can we provide an alternative for you? So that's like what Mufti Taqi is all about. And the last thing I would say, and I never understood how significant this is, and this is something that the author, the translator Mufti ibn Adam also shares in. I used to never consider this as a significant thing. When you read Mufti Taqi, and you read even Mufti ibn Adam, his fatwa, when I used to read it, I was like, this is very simple. Hanafi madhab says Maliki madhab, and they usually mention the madahib, they give a conclusion. Oh, this is quite easy. But when you realize that what they're doing is that they're taking sometimes a very abstract concept, ikhtilafat, etc., and in simple terms, providing a summary. That's an art. And you only know how hard that is when you try doing it.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's not too hard. And when I started writing, it's like the most confused jargon that I write, because I keep on writing like exceptions, I put a footnote in there, brackets, and I add this point and this nuance, and I just think, how do I explain? But then you read how smoothly Mufti Taqi has this ability of simplifying difficult concepts, right? It's an art form. And
it's a skill of the author when he makes a difficult concept, and a sign of his expertise, when he makes a difficult concept sound very simple.
Yeah, because that's why, we have it sometimes in class, because some of the kitabs I've taught for quite a while, and you probably experienced that. In class, I would teach, I think I was taught for, let's say, 6-7 years now.
Yeah.
So, like Nur Anwar, I would teach, you guys experience Nur Anwar, and do that. Oh, it sounds so easy. When it comes to exam time, I don't know what's going on. Right? But for me, because it's the 6th time I'm teaching it, I feel quite comfortable, so I can quite easily just break it down. But everyone else is like, at that time, it's like, yeah, it's quite easy. When you go into exam, you have to open the kitab, like, I don't know what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's just like a book. But Mufti Taqi, because of his proficiency, but it's an art form.
Yeah.
The ability to kind of simplify concepts. And there are some scholars that are just difficult writers.
Yeah.
Right? They are difficult writers. And I...
in history and contemporary.
100%. One thing I would notice is that because of ChatGPT, that's helped me a lot in terms of just being able to, like, write more basic. So it's not that it's like you write something, you put it in, they just smoothing it out. It helps a lot. That's one of the benefits of it, right? If you're asking, right? Just be careful with the change of text, but that's an art form. So that's something that stands out. Now, anyway, back to this work. So in the beginning, Mufti ibn Adam, he speaks about the preface of how he kind of got around to writing this work. Mufti Taqi himself has got a preface on him. And I think he has a team that actually checks out his books as well.
Just to clarify, Dars Tirmidhi is his written work, or is it?
It's written.
It's a written, so it's a formal written.
So no. So it was, he gave the Dars,
yes.
and it was written down.
That's
so he's given the background to it here. He actually mentioned in the beginning. He goes. So he goes, as for the lecture of the Honourable Shaykh Mufti Muhammad Taqi Usmani, Hafidhahullah, they are a masterpiece of scholarship, precision and clarity. He is an expert, Mufti ibn Adam saying this now, right? He is an expert in presenting complex subject matters in a simplified, systematic and lucid manner. So Mufti ibn Adam does this in English as well, by the way. Even not just in here, like in translation, but you see his fatwa quite a lot like that as well. Such that it's easy to follow and understand. Islamic finance is a household topic for the Shaykh, having spent his entire life in its study, teaching, promotion, practical implementation. His lectures are not mere customary lessons, rather they combine knowledge, profound juristic insight, tafaqquh, wisdom and balance, hikmah and wa'itidal, spirituality, tazkiyah, understanding of current affairs, and a demonstration of true understanding of religion, alhamdulillah. Despite such levels of academic excellence and spiritual profundity, his humility led him to write the following introduction to Turath Publishing. This is translated of the introduction of Mufti Taqi. For the last 10 years or so, this was written in 1980. Right, so last 10 years or so, I have been given the task to teach Jami al-Tirmidhi at Jami Darul Karachi. I have always felt I do not possess the academic, ilmi, and spiritual amali capabilities required to teach hadith, and in no way worthy of accepting the responsibility of lecturing on hadith. However, given that this teaching post was assigned to me by my seniors, I regarded compliance as a good omen for the future and accepted to deliver this service, which is still ongoing. In the beginning, when I commenced the teaching of Jami al-Tirmidhi, whilst trembling due to the full realization of my incompetence, I never imagined my wildest dreams that I would agree for my hadith lecture to be compiled and published. This is done by a student. The publication of such lectures only befit those who are actually worthy of it. Who am I? And what are my lectures that they should be published? Right? So that's the humbleness of Mufti Taqi in there as well. And then he talks about how it was eventually published. So what he's done is, he's just taken the Buyu section. So not the full Dars al-Tirmidhi. It's just the Buyu section and translated that, and he's added, not too much, but he's added footnotes. A lot of his footnotes of Mufti ibn Adam are from other books of Mufti Taqi. So for example, if he's written something here, he will say, in Takmila Fatul Mulhim, which is his commentary of Sahih Muslim, where he completes the commentary of Mufti Shabir Usmani, he does Takmila, completion of that. So in there, there's discussions who reference that. If it's in Fatawa Usmani, who reference that. If it's in Fiqh al Buyu, who reference that, Mufti ibn Adam. So what it does is, it allows you to kind of go to other works, so there's more detail which is not found here. What I found very useful about this, I sat there and I bought this when he came down. Mufti ibn Adam Taqi was here last year. He did a program in Regent's Park Masjid. Mufti ibn Adam was there. Yeah. So that's where they were selling this, and I purchased it. And on the way back from I was coming back from on the train, I started reading it there, and it's a very good read. I'll tell you why. Two reasons, right? One is that there's a lot of concepts and ideas that you hear about in Islamic finance, but you don't know where it originates from. For example, right? So if you're not aware of where this idea or concept originates from, having it done in the structure of hadith with commentary, it gets you a direct realization of how this mas'ala, this topic, is taken from the hadith. Right? So you straight away say, okay, is this hadith? That's why they say this. Right? Number two is that when there are ikhtilaf and the hadith is there, Mufti Taqi, he provides the contrary evidences, so you get to see why the ikhtilaf is there. So you're not just stuck with random different opinions. So like normally in Fatawa, they just mention the ikhtilaf. Shafi say, Maliki say this, and this is allowed according to them. You don't know the reason. You don't know the reason. So because it's structured around the hadith, and then it's evidence-based, Mufti Taqi Usmani, he mentions the ikhtilaf of the madahib through the lens of that point. Right? So that's point number one. Number two, because it's a field that Mufti Taqi himself is proficient in, he gives his opinions on there as well. And what's very fascinating with this is not only, does he mention, of course, the Hanafi position usually sides with it, but there are examples where he would accept, because this is one of the signs or one of the qualities of the ulama of Deoband, specifically, right? The ulama of Deoband were those who were active in the field of hadith when defending the madhab. But what you find, and you'll find probably examples for nearly all of them, where through the analysis of hadith, because they were scholars that were engaged in hadith, they sometimes got to a conundrum where the hadith seems to be suggesting one thing, one madhab's position more strongly, and the Hanafi madhab, as I understand it, is to the contrary. So you see sometimes they will say, okay, well, I think we should incline towards the hadith here. Or depending on the nature of the scholar, someone like Shaykh Yunus rahmatullah alayhi was much more forceful in saying just go with the hadith and give preference. Some scholars will be willing to try to find a combination, like Allama Kashmiri, we've got a lot of trying to find reconciliation. Others would say, okay, I think I'll stick to the madhab, others stick to the hadith. But what you find, because it's in the Deobandi school, because it does the Dawra hadith method, a lot of the teachers, the Shaykh hadith, they're going to engage in hadith day in, day out. So they naturally have, without even trying, it's going to impact the way you do fiqh.
Of course.
So what you find Mufti Taqi when he does this is not only does he break down issues of Islamic finance, but he actually gives preference to views. And there's like various examples of where he would say, this point, I would say that, so for example.
And while you're finding an example, I think a point that I think should not be missed by the viewers here is that if these were lessons that he dictated and the student wrote them down, and obviously they would want to go through an editing process and a refining process, but if the work reads good in a written form, then that means that the verbal speech that he was saying in his
100%.
moment must have been 100%. Very good
100%.
to have been able to explain these concepts in the way he did.
Yeah, 100%.
That's amazing.
So I'll give you an example, right? So you have this famous discussion within fiqh, which is talking about, but there's a lot of contemporary issues you can go into it. I'm not going to read through it, but it's a highly advised. Anyone who's interested in Islamic finance, even if you not, especially those who are not, don't understand a lot of it, so the technical terms, etc., right? Not in the field so much. It's very good because it breaks it a lot down. And then even places where it might not be fully, the Mufti ibn Adam does help in adding useful notes, annotations, right? Not just referencing Mufti Taqi's work. So it's very useful like that. So I give an example. You might remember it's called regarding the hadith Musarrat. Musarrat refers to the chapter regarding the animal that was not milked, right? And the hadith, and in the hadith, the Arabic text is mentioned with the grading of al-Tirmidhi. So that's mentioned in the Arabic text, and then that's translated as well. So for example, the hadith mentions that the Prophet ﷺ said, so not the whole isnad, is Abu Hurairah from Nabi ﷺ, من اشترى مصراتا فهو بالخيار إذا حلبها إن شاء ردها ورد معها صاع من تمر. Then Imam Tirmidhi says, حديث حسن صحيح. So then the hadith is translated, Mufti ibn Adam. Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah narrates that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, whoever purchases a she-goat that was left unmilked, musarrat, has an option when he milks it. If he wishes, he may return it to the seller for a refund and 1 sa' of dried dates along with it. Then he says Hasan Sahih, and then what? Because it's from Tirmidhi, in the footnote is added what other books is mentioned. So this is in Bukhari and Muslim as well. So therefore, if you're saying, in Tirmidhi, what the Bukhari and Muslim is a hadith Bukhari and Muslim, they reference it. So this hadith is Bukhari and Muslim as well. What's the problem with this narration? What was it problem in terms of what's the fiqhi conundrum here? Is that the hadith is saying that if there is a she-goat, and what they will do sometimes is that I will not milk my she-goat. So it's called musarra. I will not milk him. And then after, okay, I'm going to sell it to you. So when you come the next day, the udder is full. So you look at that and say, it gives a lot of milk. And then you test it out, a lot of milk is given. So you give me, let's say, £1,000 for it. Although it's worth £800 or something. So you purchase for £1,000, you take it, and then the next day you milk it, it comes less. You might milk it again, it's still less. You go, oh, I got cheated here. So what do? You go back, and then I have to give you the £1,000 back, you take the animal. But what the hadith adds at the end is, you have to give me, the one you purchased from me, 1 sa', which is a measurement of dry dates. What's that for? Because of the milk that you used. What's the problem here in the hadith of Imam Hanifa is that we learn from the Quran and the general principle of Sharia that when something has been misused or used, etc., something that's similar has to give back to me. How can 1 sa' of dates always take the presence of however much milk you used? It's not going to be the same. So it's not fair that's distributed. So either you use too much milk, or more milk you use, or you give me too much dates, or whatever, one or the other way, right? So unfairness is found. So then he provides the explanation. So then what Mufti Taqi does is he goes through this bahath in great detail, right? So he goes through the bahath in great detail, mentioning the opinions of Imam Shafi'i, Imam Abu Hanifa, then Bindidna Madhab, Imam Abu Yusuf, and Imam Muhammad. And at the end, Mufti Taqi then prefers the position of Imam Hanifa here. He says that Imam Abu Yusuf's position here, you can read what it is more accurate. I'm going to read it. He said, the last line he says, the position of Imam Abu Yusuf seems very balanced and logical. And the footnote is added, in other words, according to Imam Abu Yusuf, paying 1 sa' of dates under all circumstances, regardless of how much milk is extracted used, defies logic. Therefore, the buyer will pay the price of the milk used. However, this price also does not fully reflect the buyer's usage of milk, because some of the milk was produced whilst the animal was in his ownership. Thus, along with paying the milk's price, both parties should forgive each other for any shortfall. Allah knows best. So Imam Abu Yusuf, he has this middle stance, because Imam Hanifa says, well, you can't give anything, because you can't quantify how much milk you use. So he goes, no, you work out how much it was, and you give that, rather than just 1 sa'. So he's not accepting the 1 sa' example, because he goes, that doesn't make coincide the rules of Sharia. But just to dismiss it completely, Imam Hanifa says, that seems to just stretch Mufti Taqi. So he prefers Imam Abu Yusuf's view. Right? Again, doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but he does this and he meticulously goes through this. And I've made references throughout the book. So
I think that whole kind of being clear in the justification and explanation is very key, because discussing positions and then just doing tarjih of one or the other without fully elucidating on the position itself makes it very difficult for a student.
There's like examples where he's like said, evidence-wise, the Imam Shafi'i qawl makes sense, but practically it's very difficult. No, Hanifa ones make more sense.
Yeah.
Right. So you have this kind of, so you have all sorts, but what you do is, so what you find is that you start to appreciate how fatwa are given.
Yeah.
So sometimes for the outsider, it might seem very arbitrary. So they will say stuff like, why are mortgages haram, but then in car insurance allowed? What's a greater need, car or a house? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a very strong argument, but then when you go through how we got to that conclusion and how we got to this conclusion, you will see there's a different logic being utilized. Yeah. And then you appreciate why there's an ikhtilaf.
Exactly.
Right? And this is what these books do. So it's in English, it's reader friendly. Mm-hmm. Right? So at least for students of knowledge, even non-students of knowledge that are kind of clued on with some Islamic terminology and stuff, I think you will benefit, especially those who have interest in Islamic finance.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's an important book. This is called Turath. Mm-hmm. I would advise reading this book.